Welcome, brave souls, to another haunting chapter of Ghost Girl Diaries, where the supernatural awaits, transmitting from the other side, where paranormal meets glamour. I'm your host this evening, Krystal Leandra, the Queen of the Dead, a paranormal filmmaker and investigator, and the glam behind the ghost hunt. Here we dive into spine-chilling hauntings, explore the unknown, and uncover the secrets across the most haunted locations in the world. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, you're in for a thrill. So grab your EMF meter, your crystals, and your cross, because things are about to get supernatural with a little bit of glam. Let's get haunted. This is Ghost Girl Diaries. Before roses and before chocolate, before we reduced our highest expectation down to nothing more than a mere fancy dinner reservation, there was a cave, there was blood, there were wolves, and there were men running through Rome with strips of freshly stripped hide from goats. You know what time it is. It's February 15th, and welcome to Lupercalia. A Girl Can Only Dream has become a tradition on all of the channels that every year we not only talk about Lupercalia, but Krampus and all of the other really amazing pagan specialties that used to exist. Today on Ghosts Glam, we are talking about one of my absolute favorite holidays. It is the transformation that became what we know today as Valentine's Day, and its origins are haunted Lupercalia. And in the midst of this, I'm going to be trying some makeup that I haven't before. Like, this is a level 3 on the Milk Makeup Gel. I'll add all of my products down below. But I'm switching my makeup to a different shade because I'm going back red. So today you get to experiment with a few things with me. Lupercalia was known as an ancient Rome festival that was celebrated every year on February 15th. It is an alternative goth girl's dream, okay? It likely goes all the way back to at least the 6th century of BCE. At least that's as far as it can be traced. Now, here's where it really gets good, because you guys know I love Greek mythology. You know I love the gods and the goddesses. It was associated with a Greek god named Phanes. He was the Greek god of Roman fertility, shepherds, wild nature. Think of it as men being wild things, chasing the women down. Now, there was also a she-wolf involved named Lupercalia, get it? Lupercalia, who nursed two sort of, I guess we'll call them, she fostered two boys from Rome, which sounds kind of strange, I know, but welcome to Greek mythology, okay? So she nursed two boys named Romulus and Remus. I know it sounds weird to say that a sheep person nursed children, but hey, at least she didn't let them die. But these ended up becoming the founders of Rome, as the story goes. Now, where did this nursing happen? The Lupercal cave, of course. Now, it's claimed to this day that they think they found the cave that this existed. I think it's called the Palatine Hill. So tonight, let's turn myself into a modern-day wolf priestess while we unravel this story, okay? Because how in the world did a ritual of blood and fertility turn into what we know today as Valentine's Day? How did that happen? I'm whipping out this really expensive contour. It's by Ritual de Fée. I believe that's how you pronounce it. This is like $30 for this little tiny ½ ounce. I only save it for special occasions. Lupercalia is one of them. Now, Romulus and Remus were twin sons of the god Mars, the god of war. So how in the world did they end up with a she-wolf? Basically, long story short, as all Greek tragedy, they were left abandoned to die. This is when the she-wolf found them. She nursed them back to health in this cave, and eventually a shepherd found them and helped the boys into society. I mean, here's the thing. Wolves, in general, became a symbol in Rome and in that society. So it makes you wonder if it goes all the way back to the she-wolf. Even wolves to this day, think about it, known as protective. I mean, the next biggest thing I can think of is like Twilight or werewolves. The cave became sacred in itself, and then it was highly honored within the myth of Lupercalia. So you got two twin boys, you got a cave, you have a she-wolf. The word lupa in Latin means she-wolf, so Lupercalia. So it's interesting that the holiday itself was named after the she-wolf. So that tells you how important this was as a part of the myth. Now, some people would beg to differ that lupa in Latin means prostitute. Who knows if that was translated later or at the time. Going in with Cursed Cosmetics powder. Basically, they think that the title of lupa, whatever the meaning actually is, or how it's interpreted, depends on the historian that is talking about the story of Lupercalia. I think over time, eventually, ancient Rome tried to sort of blur the myth and sort of, let it fall under the radar to try to get back to the story itself. I mean, Rome was founded not with softness, but with wildness. I mean, think about all of the Roman literature that we know to this day. It was not bloomed in roses, but bloomed in teeth. I feel like we need more pink blush for the holiday for sure. Let's try this Bat Blush from Cursed because I've been dying to try it. I really want to try this mauvey pink tone. Yeah, that's what I'm wanting. Now, my favorite part of the story is the ritual itself because it's dark and moody and so Rome. Any Rome or Greek literature is just so dark and I love it. Gotta do some purple highlight. Now, the ritual itself would take place on February 15th, okay? Priests would call it the Lupercalia, and they would gather everyone in the Lupercal cave. Now, this is where it gets a little dark. It's not my favorite part of the story, but they did sacrifice goats and sometimes a dog. The dog was sacrificed for the she-wolf. Please don't sacrifice animals. Like, let's not avoid that topic. The goats represented strong fertility. The dog represented purification, strength, and even protection. So you honestly could say that the dog represented the men who were going to hunt. Oftentimes, some of the participants, men, were smeared with goat blood on their forehead. That's some occult shit if I've ever heard of it. The blood was then wiped away with wool and dripped in milk, which is strange. And then the men were sort of required to laugh. It's my opinion that, pagan times, people would understand the different shifts with energy, right? So if you laugh or chuckle, that's good energy. So you're kind of required to put good energy back into the feast or the hunt. Blood would symbolize, death or the wild side of the men getting ready to chase the women for fertility. Milk was also purification and rebirth. The laughter represented renewal. I mean, everything they did was with intention. Scholars now have researched this, and they believe that this laughing and this whole ritual is sort of right to purification of the process of hunting and becoming fertile. It's sort of meant to cleanse before spring. Like you think about, spring chickens, you get pregnant and then you have babies. So if you're, sort of doing this purification ritual before you hunt down, the female for fertility, like it has to be purified and full of life before your garden is watered with your seed. Hey, it wouldn't be crystal flare if I didn't add a couple little things in there, We're going to go with the Tainted palette from Jolie Beauty just for the Lupercalia. So I'm not sure what sort of vision I have yet, but let's just kind of go for it. Water the seed is what they were actually saying. I'm wondering if I should do purple. Like, I don't do purple very often. I'm actually allergic to purple, but let's do some purple. So here's some more random facts with this whole festival of Lupercalia, just because I'm fascinated by all of it. February itself in the Roman calendar. February itself in the Roman calendar was actually considered purification. It represented or associated purification. The word febura, so just the first part of February, means strips of goat hide, which was also used in the purification rituals. Where do you think the word February literally came from? I mean, you tell me. Death, milk, laughter. It sounds like a Roman soap opera, doesn't it? All right, so the next part is kind of crazy, and this is where the men would run through the forest or the area, find a woman that they wanted to conceive with, and they would whip and strike her with the hides. I know it's crazy. If you've never heard this story, boy, you're in for a thrill here. I mean, this is probably the best part of the story. This is the part where everybody talks. The goat hides were cut into strips that were called febura. The Lupercalia, the men, ran through the city streets, ran through the forest, and as they ran, if they found a woman they wanted to mate with, they would whip her with the hides. So women would intentionally stand on the street and wait to be whipped to basically find someone that was interested in, mating with her. Let's just get this very clear because we're living in a very different time right now. Women were willing participants in this. I mean, it's in so many pagan books, rituals, like women wanted this because they wanted to feel chosen. Remember, we're talking about a time where, fertility was prominent. It was important. It was, the main thing a woman was put on this earth to do at that time. So they wanted to be chosen. Also, take in mind that if you were whipped with the hide, even if the man didn't eventually choose you for mating, it still would, quote, increase your fertility. So the whippings were willing. They wanted to be whipped. Also, it was claimed that the hide whipping, since it was sort of blessed from the gods, that it would increase the lack of infertility, and it would also ease childbirth. So a lot of times if there were women that had a hard time conceiving, they wanted to be participants of this because they thought they would be blessed by the gods. Now, this is all over ancient Roman texts. I know what you're thinking. You're probably asking yourself, was this described as violent? No, this was not described as violent. It was not chaotic. It was a purification ritual by the gods, is what they believed. It was symbolic. It was a ritual. And I know, look, we're living in some dark times right now. I get it. There's some weird things going on with all of the documents that were released. Let's try to put ourselves into a different world to sort of escape the chaos that's going on, right? Try to not bring that chaos with us. In ancient Rome, this wasn't scandalous. It was a blessing. It was an absolute blessing. I think I'm going to go a little bit darker on the bottom lash line. I say this every time. I say this every year, but if a wolf man chased me into the forest trying to whip me, I would just roll over and accept my fate. Winky face. What a dream those women lived. Oh my God, if I could only go back in time. Simpler times. The only thing I ever waited for was to be whipped with a cowhide, running through the streets of ancient Rome. What a time to be alive, man. Especially compared to the timeline we're in now. I think I went through the wrong portal. A man chasing you through the woods to whip you in the name of fertility. God, what a night. Gotta find me one of those guys. This was deeply embedded in Roman structure. I mean, this was something they waited year-round to celebrate. Although, let's really think of this like masculine versus feminine for a second, because you guys know I love the divine masculine, the divine feminine stuff, the healing journey. Let's really think about that for a minute. Let's put our thinking caps on. How primal is it for a woman to be standing there and to be lusted after by a man or men? Because I think in some of the rituals, the men would draw names out of a hat, and sometimes they would have to find that specific girl too, depending on like Lupercalia, depending on the ritual itself. But the women probably were in their total feminine energy of being lusted after, and the men were being primal. They were chasing, they were hunting. That's what they're good at. That's what they do, right? That's why I always tell you girls, never chase a man. Don't chase a man, make him chase you. That's his job. It is his primal instinct to chase and hunt you. Don't switch role reverses with him, right? If you're the feminine energy, make him work for it. Make him lust after you. That is the most primal form that you can ever find. I mean, but even to this day, fertility is still political. It's always been political. I mean, think about it right now. The birth rates are low and they've tried everything to try to get us millennials to keep popping babies out. Times are different. Back then, fertility was wanted, but it was still political. Producing children strengthened Rome in their eyes. I need a really dramatic shimmer, and I can't decide which one do we do. This one would go better, but this one's really loud. I mean, the question always asks is, was it a lottery? Because some texts claim that there was a lottery, like I said earlier, where they would draw your name out of a hat, and it was kind of just the luck of the draw of who you got. And that was who the man would chase down. I'm wondering if it changed over time, if eventually they added in the lottery. Look at the shimmer, isn't that pretty? And maybe in the origin times, it wasn't quite that way. I just went haywire with this glitter. I can't control myself. I'm sorry. My God, look at that. Take the glitter away from me immediately. Now, depending on which part of the text that you read from different times, sometimes men would draw a name out of a hat and they would hook up with a woman for the fertility festival, just for the festival. Other times they would be long-lasting relationships, which is kind of sweet. Can you imagine someone being like, how did you guys meet at the Lupercalia festival? Like, what a cute story. Although it's not cute if he was whipping more than one woman. That's a problem. But, you know, I wasn't there. I can't contest to it. I would have been so obnoxious back in that day. Like, if some dude slapped me with a hide and then went and slapped 3 other girls, I'd be like, that dude's a hoe. Nobody hook up with him. He's just trying to get laid at the festival. That's how I am to this day, though. Like, I have to have soul bonds with people. I just don't do random one-nighters. Love with me has to feel like past life or nothing, or I'm just not interested, honestly. No wonder I'm so hard to please up in here. I want to add, like, some cool eyeliner just to make it a little bit more edgy. Added a little bleeding heart right here. I'm going to add 2 on each side. I'm going to add some rhinestones too in some random places. I think we need some really big lashes for this look. Let's go with the Ioni ones. Anyway, it was debated if that actually occurred where their names were drawn out of a hat. It's just in several different texts. So some people that were interpreters on the Christian side said that it was exaggerated. It may have not been formalized. It may have not been a widespread tradition to pull names out of a hat. It's just speculated. Some parts of Lupercalia in the history books are crystal clear. Others are kind of unknown, and you kind of have to speculate. You have to connect the dots. A lot of scholars will say stuff like, we have to separate poetry from actual proof. But I don't know. Sometimes a good story is what makes it better. I mean, it's interesting, though, because if you take everything I just said and then tie it into what February Valentine's Day is today, it's pairing symbolism, right? It doesn't have to be male and female counterpart. It's just counterpart. Later on, in medieval poetry, there was a lot of poetry that was sort of linked with birds mating in February. But over centuries, it's without a doubt February is the romantic month of the year. From goat hide rituals and names being pulled out of jars, humanity has sometimes always want love to feel fated, and I'm right there with them. Romance and fate is an alternative goth girl's dream without a doubt. Now, by the 5th century of 5 BCE, Christianity had now become dominant in Rome. Pagan had now become criticized, and the festivals were basically condemned. There was a pope from the late 400s, 400 CE. He publicly condemned Lupercalia as a holiday. He called it outdated and morally questionable, and the festival became literally banned. And then at the same time, stories of Saint Valentine started to circulate. So see how they did that? See how good religion is at overlapping things and making things, especially in paganism, become non-existent. So Saint Valentine became associated with love and marriage and mating. Lupercalia didn't. And by the Middle Ages, Valentine's Day was completely taken over and romanticized, and no one ever talked about Lupercalia again. But let's talk about some really important Valentine nuances. Valentine's Day did not instantly replace Lupercalia. The tradition was gradual and cultural, just like anything is. Religious trauma. History rarely flips a switch with just one insignia. I mean, civilization didn't completely erase the she-wolf. It kind of just dressed her in lace instead. Fertility, power, and the wolf's archetype. I mean, fertility rituals still exist in today's day and age, depending on what culture you're talking about. They weren't shamed, they were sacred. I mean, the wolf archetype still is around to this day as well. Wild, feminine energy, protection, pack loyalty, when you have children, protecting your pack, survival instincts. There is something deliciously gothic about this tale. It's horrifying when you think about it in the roots of love. Before we curated what we know today as romance, it was raw, it was physical, it was primal, it was communal, it was a part of the community. That's what paganism was. Lupercalia was about purification and fertility, and that's it. It involved sacrifice, ritual striking, chasing, being chased, pairing, and then Valentine's Day evolved and basically absorbed what everyone always knew of Lupercalia. So when February arrives every year and someone decides to hand you roses, remember the cave, remember the she-wolf, remember that love once ran and chased through streets, remember Rome, remember the laughing, remember what it feels like to be in love, be wild, and be free. But I have to ask, would you survive Lupercalia? And that's it for today's Ghost and Glam Ghost Girl Diaries. Happy Lupercalia, everyone. Be careful whipping each other, okay? And I don't want to hear about it either. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Ghost Girl Diaries. Thank you so much for joining me in my crypt. If you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the ghostly adventures continue. And also don't forget to follow me on all social media platforms. You can search for Krystal Leandra or Ghost Girl Diaries. Please support me on both. This is where you can catch exclusive content, behind the scenes footage, and stay up to date on all things paranormal and glam. And as always, stay curious, stay fearless, and stay spooky. And I'll catch you next time on Ghost Girl Diaries, where the dead never rest, and neither do we. Until then, my ghoulish friends, sweet screams.